the people who demand Epstein files, ironically enough, often will actually not call for full disclosure because they will allow for a huge range of files to continue to be concealed on the grounds that we have to protect the privacy rights of victims. So if you look at that Massey-Khanna bill, that was sort of the part of the impetus for that press conference last week, and you read it, I know I did something very controversial. I read the bill. It includes exceptions that would allow the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, to continue concealing Epstein files if she determines that the privacy interests of purported victims might be infringed upon. Now, all these purported victims are now adults. Like the earliest possible Epstein quote-unquote victim would have to be in like their 30s. So what, we're supposed to accept that in perpetuity, none of these files can ever be released because there could be some claim of a privacy interest to keep them concealed? That's not full disclosure. That's not full transparency. And even there's...
But just because of their age doesn't mean they wouldn't want the privacy of what happens had they been abused. And just to color that in, it was earlier this year, Pam Bondi said, tomorrow, and she is the Attorney General, she said, tomorrow we're releasing the files.
Right.
And tomorrow came round and she said, no, we've got to protect. This is just coloring in what you've said. We've got to protect the victims.
She distributed these fake prop binders to a bunch of right-wing influencers, too.
And they walked out of the White House with folders that said Epstein files, and then they opened it up and just everything's redacted.
Yeah, they were waving it around like they just won the Super Bowl, like they were hoisting up the trophy or something. It was embarrassing.
This is a side point, but why all of this hoo-ha and dramatics from the Trump administration if there is nothing?
No, it's a good question.
What on earth are they playing at with that whole sort of...
Well, I mean, my contention is not that there is nothing, right? I think there is a lot of probably interesting material that is still in the possession of different branches of the government, whether it's the judiciary, which has plenty of materials, particularly Southern District of New York and in Florida, South Florida, that would be very revelatory, but revelatory for reasons that maybe might surprise some people, because if the full scope of information were released, it might show that some of these central Epstein accusers or victims or survivors had a good deal of problems in terms of the veracity of their stories. And we don't want that information, right? We want to make sure that's concealed in perpetuity. So you say, despite their ages today, they still might want to have materials concealed from their past. Okay, I guess my argument would be...
Wouldn't that be inconsistent with what Trump said, is that there's nothing to hide? Why wouldn't he want it proved that there is nothing?
Because, I mean, look at this birthday book thing, right? Trump apparently wrote a letter to Jeffrey Epstein. A jokey sort of, sexually maybe...
You mean the page from the birthday book?
Yeah, so
we'll put an asset up. So
okay, yeah.
It's kind of boobs.
A Sharpie,
with some writing,
image of a woman,
and then his signature at the bottom.
Right, so...
Which he's denying is his signature.
I don't really buy the denial.
Yeah.
I don't think I never bought that the Wall Street Journal would just fabricate the existence of that birthday card.
Particularly as others have been authenticated.
Yes.
Like, why would Peter Mandelson be sacked if Mandelson had been?
And so Trump immediately sued the Wall Street Journal when they first reported on the existence of that birthday card in July, and the lawsuit didn't make any sense to me. And it was like shooting himself in his own foot politically, I thought, because what would be the problem? Just if I were advising him, which I'm not, although I have talked to people around the White House who kind of are in rough sympathy with my approach to this because they think basically I'm on target, which is not always the case in terms of the people in power, right? In terms of what I journalistically cover, but hey, strange bedfellows. If I were advising Trump, I would just say there's no reason to obstinately deny that this is real. We know you have the relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. It's not some big mystery. You obviously socialized with him. We know you flew on each other's planes. It's in the flight logs. You can't keep this hidden in perpetuity. I would just admit that it's a real card and insist that it does not show that you are somehow guilty of committing child sex crimes. Yeah. That's absurd.
So you think he's just butchered the whole PR strategy around the Epstein?
Yeah, I mean, he adds fuel to the fire every time he opens his mouth because he just says hoax or it's bullshit. And what does the uninformed observer infer from that? Oh, that must mean he wants to cover up something incredibly salacious. Right. I don't think that's what it shows at all. I think it shows that Trump, just by reflex, likes to, aggressively deny the veracity or the
Yes, I suspect
the veracity of any media reporting that he thinks is politically detrimental to him.
Yeah. Which, by the way, he did with Project 2025. So he denied anything to do with it, and then the next day called up the head of the Heritage Foundation to say, I had to do it, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So he always does that.
Yeah. So look, let's go back to the assets. With the various jobs that it seems he had and various work he was doing, do you think that it's feasible that he acquired the amount of wealth that he did? That 4 or 5 properties, the Boeing 727, and I've read $600 million worth. Is that accurate?
Well, when he was arrested, when he was re-arrested federally in July of 2019, there were pre-trial motions and hearings, and one of them was around the potential of him getting granted bail. And pursuant to that bail motion, he had to disclose his assets, right? And his lawyers divulged on his behalf that his net worth or his assets totaled around $600 million at the time. And that's a lot of money, no doubt about it. But I just don't really buy that it's that implausible that he could have accumulated it, especially given, like, Alan Dershowitz, who represented Epstein, right, in the 2007-2008 Florida ordeal, said that he was told by Epstein that in relation to his work with Leslie Wexner, he would get 1% of his annual revenues or something to that effect. So if Leslie Wexner was worth $8 or $9 billion when Epstein started working with him, whatever the revenue was on a given year, like, do the arithmetic as to what that would add up to cumulatively. And then he had these other high net worth clients who were also billionaires or heiresses or what have you. He had his other, like, enterprises or endeavors. It's just not that crazy to me. Now, look, maybe he stored some money offshore. I would not be surprised in the slightest about that. His whole craft was about devising strategies for wealthy people to save their money or to do some tax avoidance or whatnot. So that wouldn't surprise me. I just think that the supposed mystery that people want to insist must exist,
right,
is exaggerated, and it's based on confirmation bias. Like, people want to believe that there's this huge mystery, right? Because then that would entitle them to posit all these other extravagant claims around Mossad or CIA or intelligence ties or what have you, or basically just argue that the supposed lack of information is itself evidence that something much more sinister and grandiose must have happened.
Right. Thanks for watching this clip from The Winston Marshall Show. You can click here to watch the full episode, and for more clips like this one, don't forget to subscribe. And as always, be well.